guests. Welcome to a discussion, a deep dialogue on the future of work and creating wealth in minority communities. As Erica mentioned, my name is Classy Duncan, and I serve as the Vice President for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation for the Urban League of Louisiana. We are conducting this discussion in partnership, a collaborative effort, a wonderful partnership between the Urban League and Dillard University, the College of Business. And I'm so excited to be working in collaboration with Dr. Kristen Brody on this initiative. I want to say that this is the first of many discussions. As you all know, we have a lot of work to do in the space of workforce development, but also wealth creation in minority communities. And so I know that you all are familiar with the National Urban League and also the Urban League of Louisiana. And so we want to talk about a little bit about our work, but also welcome you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an opportunity for our president and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana to bring greetings on behalf of the organization. And then we will come back and begin our panel shortly. But again, I want to say before we move on, this is a great time. I know that we are experiencing some unprecedented times, but while we have many challenges, it really presents an opportunity, many opportunities for us as a community, the Black community, but also other minority communities. And so I invite all of our attendees to ask questions in our chat box. I invite all of our attendees to remain present and become present in the discussion and to be mindful of the discussion today. With that, I'll turn it over to our president and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana, Ms. Judy Reese-Morris. Judy?
Hi. Thank you so much, Classy. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a very, very important conversation about the future of work and creating wealth within communities of color. I am Judy Reese-Morris. I serve as president and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana, and want to say thank you to the Dillard University College of Business, Dr. Kristen Brody, for her incredible leadership in her work, as well as our own vice president for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Classy Duncan. These two women are both incredible leaders in the entrepreneurship and innovation space. You're going to experience working with them this afternoon, and I hope this is not the last time that you connect with both of them. You're going to be inspired by what you hear. We also obviously have a powerhouse full of incredible speakers, and all of that will be tremendous. So thank you so much for being with us. I want to say one word about the person that I'm getting ready to introduce, and that is extraordinary. He is an extraordinary leader, has been throughout his life and professional career. He is providing incredible leadership at the national level around this global pandemic and what all of us, but particularly what the African American community should be doing, what we need to do to both survive and then ultimately to thrive, to get through this crisis situation. His name is Mark Morial. He serves as the national president and CEO of the National Urban League. He is also very proud to say the former mayor of the great American city of New Orleans, Louisiana. He is known across the country for his honesty, for his courage, and for his direct leadership. And that is exactly what we need in this country right now. We are so grateful to have him, and we are all, with the Urban League, so proud, all 90 affiliates of us across the United States of America, so proud to be able to say that he is our leader. Please welcome the national president and CEO of the National Urban League of Louisiana, of the National Urban League of the United States of America, Mr. Mark Morial.
Hey, thank you, Judy. Let me thank you so much for your incredible leadership. And it's good to be with Dr. Maya, Quentin, Dr. Kristen, and Classy, all great leaders and great people. And Judy, you continue to simply raise the bar at the Urban League of Louisiana. And I'm so proud of this new collaboration between Dillard and the Urban League of Louisiana. And I wanted to begin with a note of history. And that note of history is that one of the largest Black-owned businesses in the 20th century was owned by Dillard University. its name was Flint Goodrich Hospital. Flint Goodrich Hospital, which was on Louisiana Avenue, is now Senior Citizens Apartments. That hospital happens to be where I was born, as well as all my brothers and sisters. It was the, quote, Black hospital in New Orleans. Owned by Dillard University, it employed Black doctors, Black nurses, Black clerks, Black security personnel, Black people who took care of the grounds. It was an economic engine for uptown New Orleans. It was a place of quality health care. In those days, you either had to go to Charity Hospital to the colored wing through the colored door, or you went to Flint Goodrich Hospital. And Flint Goodrich, as a hospital, closed in 1981, 82, or 83. So the tradition of Dillard University being intimately involved in Black economic development in the city of New Orleans, and the long-standing relationship between Dillard University and the Urban League of New Orleans, now the Urban League of Louisiana, was represented in the embodiment of Dr. Albert W. Dent, who was president of Dillard University from roughly the late 1930s until the early 1970s. Dr. Dent began his career as the CEO or administrator of Flint Goodrich Hospital, and then was tapped to become president of Dillard University. Dillard has been intimately involved, and Dr. Dent was also a board member of the Urban League of Greater New Orleans in the 1940s and 50s. So this coming together of the Urban League of Louisiana and Dillard University to focus on the creation of wealth in Black, Brown, and Asian communities in New Orleans and Southeastern Louisiana is in alignment with, consistent with the mission and the work of both organizations. So I want to congratulate Dillard. I want to congratulate you, Judy, for bringing this piece together. Number two, you all know that one of my great passions is about Black economic development, whether it be people who work and get paid fair wages, or people who decide to build businesses and enterprises. It is the only way that we can truly close the wealth gap in America, which is considerable, the 10-to-1 wealth gap between African Americans and whites. There's never been a time when I haven't been impressed at the talent, the ingenuity, the ideas, the passion, and the abilities of African American entrepreneurs and business people in New Orleans. And I always believed as a public official that all they needed was a door open and somebody on their side, somebody who would fight for them, somebody who would make the resources of government available and who would open the doors to the private sector, indeed, if they can. And for New Orleans' most pressing issue is its consistent, systemic levels of poverty that exist in the city. And it's poverty amongst working people, people who get up and work every day and give everything they have, yet do not earn enough money to make ends meet, do not earn enough money to have the dignified life that they are. So in this, it's important to create, to keep in mind that this center is about work and it's about wealth. And the two go hand in hand to a broader vision about the economy of New Orleans and the future of New Orleans. And unless that is central to the city's overall, and the region and the state's overall economic approach, then the battles are going to be difficult indeed to win. When I joined the National Urban League a little more than a decade ago to become its CEO, the league had never been involved in promoting are serving Black entrepreneurs. And I thought it was a missing element in an overall economic empowerment agenda. Because after all, what is Black entrepreneurship about? It's about creating jobs. It's about creating opportunity. And I felt that the league had been good at knocking on the doors of corporations and government and pushing for people to hire our people in our community, but that we needed to do more to create jobs in our community where we're the hirers and we're the decision makers. And that is what entrepreneurship and business growth and development are really all about. So I want to encourage the success. I know that this will be successful. I know with the leadership at Dillard, Dr. Kimbrough and his team, Judy, with you and your team, with support from the private sector and private sector advocates like Quentin, that this can be a powerful new asset in this effort to build, work, and create wealth in New Orleans, southeastern Louisiana. So I want to thank all of you all for doing this, and it's just great to be able to just be a supporter of it. And I'll be keeping in touch, and I'll be there as you need us. I'll just finally say that the National Urban League today has 12 entrepreneurship centers. One, of course, in New Orleans. Those entrepreneurship centers, get this, serve 14,000 small businesses, of which approximately 90% of them are African American. And of the 90% that are African American, about 55% of them are owned by women. And that's the work that we're doing. Each year, our senior economist, Dr. Bernard Anderson, with the help of Dr. Silas Lee, puts together an economic impact statement. The one we did for the year concluded 2018, Dr. Anderson called me and said that the Entrepreneurship Center program of the National Urban League was now the largest program in terms of overall economic impact. And that the 14,000 businesses we serve, the number of people they hired, the financings and the expansions we were able to undertake, it exceeded the very significant economic impact of those that we were connecting to jobs, which were much more considerable in number, but less in terms of overall economic impact. So keep in mind that creating entrepreneurs is a 2 for 3 for 4 for in terms of what you're able to do with that. So I just close with that and encourage all of your work, and good luck to all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moria. We appreciate those words of encouragement. And, we here at the Center for Entrepreneurship in New Orleans, serving the state of Louisiana, are proud to be a part of the network of entrepreneurship centers across the affiliates of the Urban League. So thank you so much for all of your support. We work very closely with Ms. Stephanie Devon. She is our connector. And I want to thank you for that continued support. Also, thank you so much, Judy, for your leadership and also for your guidance on how we move forward during these times. So again, thank you so much for those remarks. I want to get started with our panel, but I want to provide some context to what we are experiencing today. So we know that a lot of folks, it's actually been described as Black America being impacted by 3 pandemics, right? So we have COVID-19 going on, we have an economic downturn going on, and also the impacts of racism. Coronavirus has showed us that there's a blatant health gap and there's disparities that exist within our communities. And of course, we are disproportionately impacted by the virus, in both fatalities and exposure. But in addition, this keeps, there's other components of this. the tragic deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others. I mean, it really has been graphically and disparagingly exposed, what we all have known all along, that, racism and social injustice against people of color is alive and well. And as a matter of fact, it's becoming increasingly bold, right?
Yeah.
But also we have this issue of unemployment. So unemployment is surging and skyrocketing across the country. So you have individuals and families, small businesses in our most vulnerable communities are experiencing unprecedented economic hardships. And the downturn is real. The economic downturn is real. It's real to those people who are struggling to pay their bills, that are, trying to keep food on the table and trying to maintain housing for their families. So it's real. We are in a real state of emergency. So now is the time, and that's why Dr. Brody and I wanted to bring this up. Now is the time to start having meaningful dialogue around the issues that will get Black America and other minority communities to a state of economic resilience and parity. Of course, is a part of the mission of the National Urban League, and of course its affiliates. So today we want to discuss two opportunities. We know the first is that understanding that we are challenged by systemically generated skills gaps, unemployment, underemployment continues to plague our communities, our minority communities, and of course that they've been exacerbated by these current events. And that's just the baseline challenge, right? That's just the baseline. Now we have to add to the equation the onset of automation and how the workforce and the workplace will change as a result. Now there are several, reports and predictions around what this looks like, but the issue is not necessarily the loss of jobs to automation. That's possible, but the real, one of the things that we need to pay attention to is the shift in the skills that are going to be required by workers to work alongside automation, right? Yeah. So in essence, our workforce needs to be getting prepared now if we want to make sure that we get to that economic state of independence, right? So that's the first issue. The second piece is around wealth creation through entrepreneurship in our minority communities. There's a new study from Northwestern, I think it's Northwestern University, but they studied estimates for every dollar of accumulated wealth that white families have in the US, the average Black family has 1 cent. Think about that. Latinx families have 8 cents. That's a huge disparity, a huge gap. And if we want to think about erasing the racial wealth gap in the US, we gotta be working to act now. It really looks at and requires a fundamental shift in how we enterprise, looking at creating scalable, profitable, viable businesses that can be generationally transitioned, and how we support minority-owned businesses within our communities, but also, as Mark mentioned, in the public and private sectors, right? It also needs to take a look at the financial ecosystem that supports minority-owned businesses. So there's many levels to this. I know there's only so much that we're going to be able to cover today, but we wanted to start this conversation. But today, we have a huge opportunity. We are so honored to have our guests with us today to provide some insights on these two topics. This is, as Judy mentioned, a powerhouse panel. When we talk about workforce, economic, and civic leadership across the country, this is what this panel represents. So today we are excited to have with us, and I'll go ahead and start by just briefly introducing the panel, and then I'll turn it over to them for just a couple of seconds of introduction so that you guys can have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what they do. So I'll start off with Dr. Maya Rockeymoore Cummings. She's the founder, president, and CEO of Global Policy Solutions and former chair of the Maryland Democratic Party. Ms. Stephanie Rawlings Blake, principal, SRB and Associates, and former mayor of the city of Baltimore. Mr. Quentin Messer, president and CEO of New Orleans Business Alliance. And our very own Ms. Cherie LaCour Duckworth, serving as our vice president of the Office of Workforce and Development for the Urban League of Louisiana. And my partner in this effort, Dr. Kristen Brody, Dean of the College of Business and the Baron Hilton Endowed Professor of Economics at Dillard University. We'll start off with brief introductions and then we'll go right into our questions. Dr. Brody, if we could start off with you with just a couple of seconds of an introduction about the work that you're doing at Dillard.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for working with me on this. I want to thank Dr. Walter Kimbrough, our president, for his support, and our vice president for academic affairs, Dr. Yolanda Page, for her support. And I would be remiss if I did not thank the UNCF, because part of this work is funded by a CPI grant that we received from them. So thank you to the UNCF, and I look forward to getting started.
Thank you, Dr. Brody. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Cummings. If you could provide just a little bit about your work. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're so honored to have you here.
Okay.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay, very good. So I just wanted to say, once an urban leaguer, always an urban leaguer. As you might know, I used to work at the National Urban League and their think tank in Washington, D.C. back in the day. I worked for Hugh Price and for Mark Morial, so it was good to see him. I wanted to say for over 10 years, I've actually worked on a national initiative called the Closing the Racial Wealth Gap Initiative. For the last 5 years of my involvement, I was the co-national leader of that effort. And we worked hard to uplift the importance of the racial wealth gap across the country, educating policymakers, educating the administration, certainly educating members of the media about why it's so important. So I feel very grateful that the media has now taken off, and this is something that has been basically incorporated. We used to only talk about income, now in poverty, and now it's being incorporated into everything that we do. And so that's just a little bit about the work that I've done. I've also done work on automation, so I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cummings. We appreciate that. And we'll move on to Mr. Messer, Quentin Messer from the New Orleans Business Alliance. If you could bring us greetings.
Well, good afternoon. I'm incredibly honored to be here. I'm say something. Yeah, I have 2 daughters, a happily married Black woman, and I just have to salute Black woman magic. If I, just look here. So I'm honored to be here. And on a sort of serious note, leading the local economic development organization in New Orleans, the former mayor, Mark Morial, who's one of my role models and mentors, mentioned it. We have a lot of work to do in New Orleans. I'm honored to have folks from the Baltimore area who are working very hard. And the last thing I said, what we need to do, we will accomplish it, but it's going to take courageous leadership, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much, Quentin. And Ms. Rawlings Blake, Ms. Stephanie Rawlings Blake, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Could you provide us with some greetings?
Yes, thank you, Classy. I, like Dr. Rockymore Cummings, love your name. I'm going to say it as much as possible because I just think as we're talking about Black girl magic, that your name does it all. It is my pleasure to be here with you, and I was very humbled and honored to accept the invitation from Dr. Brody to join this powerful panel. I was very happy to see former Mayor Mark Morial, your national president, like Mayor Morial. I served as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and had the distinction of being the first African-American woman to hold that post. And I also served as the secretary of the DNC. And I really think that the work that I have done as mayor of Baltimore and in my other roles is really at that intersection of how do we make government work for the people that it serves? How do we make our party work for the people who consistently elect Democrats across the country? So I like to work on behalf of the least of us. And I like to work to make sure that we don't get left behind. That's why when I was mayor, I made significant investments in innovation and made Baltimore really one of the top 10 places in the country for tech startups, for minority business, and for inclusion. And I was very, very proud to do that, and very humbled to continue to do that work on the private sector side as an advocate and a connector.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And we're so, again, honored to have you here. And Ms. Cherie LaCour Duckworth.
Yes, thank you. Great afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Classy, first of all, for being my partner in this space and for inviting me to be on such a powerful panel. You know, as stated earlier, I am the Vice President of Workforce Development for the Urban League of Louisiana. And we work primarily, you know, with youth and adult career seekers who are looking to either expand or advance in their careers or enter into the workforce for the first time. You know, and it's been really funny because this pandemic has opened up a lot of opportunities while also closing a lot of opportunities for people. And so, you know, we just want to make sure that everyone has a fair chance at getting a job, a fair chance at entering into trainings so that they can compete for jobs. Now, a part of the Office of Workforce Development's mission is to build the core competencies that produce a common set of knowledge and skills for career seekers, and to provide them with a foundation to access a full range of occupations that will lead them to self-sustaining wages. You know, and COVID-19 we have to take advantage of whatever we can get out of this pandemic. But again, I'm very happy to be here, and welcome to all of the other panelists.
Thank you so much, Cherie. We appreciate it. So I want to get started. I want to talk first about the wealth creation in minority communities through entrepreneurship. And I want to start off with this question, and I'll start off with you, Dr. Cummings, if you could start here. We talk about wealth creation in minority communities a lot, right, in the work that we do. What does success look like when it comes to creating generational wealth? And what is preventing us from getting there?
So what success looks like is to be able to build a profitable enterprise where you can generate enough wealth to sustain yourself and your family members during your lifetime, but then be able to pass it on over generations. And it's been very few and far between that we've seen examples of how this has been carried out in the African American community. And this is primarily because white wealth has been subsidized in the United States of America. While Black wealth has actually been, you know, we know from Black Wall Street and other incidents like that, that not only have Black people's wealth been, confiscated or, you know, marginalized, it's been actively undermined by U.S. policy and practice by, you know, keeping us out of opportunities that would allow us to build and advance our wealth. And by promoting wealth stripping, allowing corporations and other entities to basically not only strip us of any kind of earnings that we make from our labor, but also to skim our wealth through profit motive exercises, you know, such as, predatory lending and housing schemes that charge us more, and, you know, you name it. You can go down the list of schemes that have been held over time that have stripped us of what little wealth we've been managed to build. So with that, we have a major challenge because African-American racial wealth gap in this country is as large, not larger than it was in the 1960s. And a recent study projected that if we continue on the current trajectory that we're on, we will actually see the median net wealth of African-Americans become zero by the year 2053. So that means that, yes, we are at a critical moment in time. We never recovered from the twin financial crisis of the 2008 crisis combined with the housing mortgage crisis. And now we're being hit by COVID, both the health consequences and the economic consequences. And so we actually have a lot of work to do. And a lot of this work is going to have to take place in the realm of politics and policy, in addition to tackling the practice.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to add to that, kind of, idea of what success looks like for minority communities in terms of building and creating generational wealth. I thought that was a brilliant description of what success should look like. Quentin?
You know, it's hard to follow something like that, but I'll just make two very quick points. I think Dr. Cummings was absolutely spot on. The two additional points are the following. There are a couple of things that we've discovered with COVID-19. One, we've discovered that education, which was supposed to be the great equalizer, has not been the great equalizer. Blacks have historically over-indexed, we've over-invested, we've taken out loans, we've gone into great debt to send our young people to school, successful generations, and people aren't earning. And whether you look at McKinsey study or studies by Axios, what we find is even with education, Blacks who have postgraduate degrees are only earning slightly more than whites who have some college. So where's the return on investment on that? And that's directly salient for institutions like Dillard that are the backbone of not only just African American community, but communities like New Orleans and regions like the South. The second thing I would say is we're going to have to figure out how to make sure that there's more risk capital available for entrepreneurs of color. One of the challenges that we have with entrepreneurship is most times entrepreneurs hit it on their third, fourth, fifth venture. But in the Black community, you only get one time, because if you're trying to raise money with friends and family, your friends are like, look, dude, frat, you know, I'm in a fraternity, frat, I'll hook you up this time, but it's got to hit, you know, because I can't afford to lose this. And so we need to figure out how to create more risk capital, because too many of our businesses try to go exclusively on debt financing, and we realize the limitations of that. And so those are the only two things I would add.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful points. Mr. Rawlings Blake?
Quentin took the words right out of my mouth. You know, we spend so much time focused on lending and making sure that there are more lending opportunities for African Americans. But I agree wholeheartedly. There needs to be more Black fund managers, more risk capital, more investment. And there also needs to be more partnerships with the government that serve our community. For example, we know that the biggest opportunity any family has in this country historically to create wealth has been their home. Yet in so many of our communities, communities of color lack sufficient investment. And that's why one of the major accomplishments that I undertook as mayor was to deal with blight and vacant housing, and try to increase the value of homes in Baltimore so families across the board could increase their wealth opportunity. So we created that with incentives for home ownership, as well as by really being smart about the way that we did code enforcement to raise the value of homes across the board. And we need to use all of the tools that we have in our toolbox and able to support wealth in our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you. I know, you know, one of the things that we see, of course, as we work with small businesses, especially during this time, as we are trying to manage through COVID-19, but even before, we saw the disparity of access to capital. Not only the disparity of access to capital, but also the disparity of preparedness for access to capital, correct? And so we are, you know, we have been working diligently to address these issues, not just the Urban League of Louisiana, but across the ecosystem here regionally. And I know that, of course, across the country, this has been a big issue as well. And so I want to shift, and I do agree that, you know, there needs to be a better look at how we can get into the space of not being so dependent on loans, but there is a space, right, in terms of scaling our small businesses, but it has to be the right business, right? It has to be the right business model. It has to be something that's viable. It has to be something that has the ability to last beyond the owner, right? And so that is the work that our ecosystems are doing, is working on how do we scale our businesses. But when there is an opportunity, how do we, what do we think that banks and other financial institutions, so I mean, your traditional banks, your CDFIs, your non-depository institutions, Black-owned banks, what is it that can be done, or what do we think the role of these banks and other financial institutions is in lessening the wealth gap in minority and communities? And is it achievable, right? Are they a part of the process? And we can actually, Ms. Blake, I'll start with you.
I think the financial institutions have to be a part of this equation in order for our community to be successful, and they need to be a part of the equation on many levels. I think the financial institutions are a perfect place to create stronger mentorship opportunities between existing businesses and the businesses that are going to these institutions and seeking support. We don't have to keep reinventing the wheel in our community. We have a wealth of knowledge. We just have to be very intentional about connecting this next generation of entrepreneurs with the ones who have come along before us. And we also have to demand more of that generation. We have, just like we have elected officials across the country who are in positions and working hard, as I did, to make government work for the people it serves, we have business leaders in this country who have been successful and have information to share. And I think we have to be much more intentional about saying, we need you to give back. We need you to reach back and to help us along the way, because we have to stick together. And we've seen in this season of Corona, we have seen how our community has had to come together in new and innovative ways. And I think out of this pandemic, we are going to be on the other side of it stronger, because we know that we are all we have. We have to depend on our community to continue to move us forward.
Absolutely, definitely agree with that in terms of mentorship and circling back, right, to our community, to those successful businesses. Absolutely a part of the equation and a part of the ecosystem to support those businesses. Dr. Cummings.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add that I was involved in actually inviting and helping to implement the 10,000 Small Businesses program here in Baltimore. It's run by Goldman Sachs. Since it's been launched, we've had 4 different cohorts to go through it, more than 200 businesses served, primarily people of color-owned businesses. And what that curriculum does is it basically helps people to basically refine and be focused on what their business model is. It helps them to understand how to refine it so that it actually works for the market that they're seeking to target. It also connects them to a network of entrepreneurs where they can actually work and do business with each other. And after they successfully graduate from the program, it also gives them access to capital on the back end because they've been certified by this program. I do think that, and it's been successful in places across the country. And so I do think that that is also a model that we can actually basically promote that can be replicated, not just through the Goldman Sachs program, but through other organizations like the National Urban League and the Urban League of Louisiana. I also want to point out that my organization did a study several years ago. It was called The Color of Entrepreneurship. And we found that if the number of people of color-owned firms were proportional to their distribution in the labor market, so for example, African Americans are 12% of the population, 10% of the labor market, people of color would own 1.1 million more businesses with employees. And these firms would add about 9 million jobs and about $300 billion in workers' income to the US economy. So by not investing in African-American owned firms and firms owned by people of color, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face The nation needs us, especially as the population grows, the population of people of color grow. So we actually have to get positioned to build. And I think that this is what this effort that you all are doing with Dillard is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that? We're thinking about, banks, financial institutions, what other resources or how do we look at the financing available in minority communities for Black-owned businesses? Any other thoughts on that?
Yes, Quentin, I'm sorry, go ahead. Somebody was going to say something, please.
Please, Quentin, say something about the Community Reinvestment Act.
No, I'll let you say that, Dr. Cummings. I was going to say something different. Go ahead, Dr. Cummings.
It's a failure. We need a new CRA, a new Community Reinvestment Act that actually brings the resources to the communities and invests in a credible way. The big, large institutions have found a way to get around it. We need a new version of it, a 21st century version, and that's all I'm going to say right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I was going to say was I think we are going to have to look at supporting Black depository institutions. So in New Orleans, we have Liberty Bank, which is one of the largest Black-owned banks. We're going to have to support them with deposits because you can't loan what you don't have deposited. So I think that's something we're going to have to look at. And if we're going to really think holistically about how to contribute to African-American entrepreneurship as well as entrepreneurship by other communities of color.
Right, absolutely. So
I think I would just add that it's important that banks come to schools to recruit, right? And more so to HBCUs, because who are the lending officers? Who are the people making those decisions? So as those people come to HBCUs like Dillard, starting in the freshman year for students, they can be exposed to these new job opportunities. They can learn about what it is that they may want to do. And those banks can work with universities to tell us, what do our graduates need to know and be able to do in order to get those jobs? Because that will help us to adjust our programs. So through those partnerships, we can create pipelines so that there are more people that look like us that are making those decisions that change our communities.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm hearing great things, and this discussion again is one of many, but it's really around thinking through what some of those action-based steps are, right? We heard revisiting the Community Reinvestment Act, making sure that we are supporting and creating deposit accounts with Black-owned locally Black-owned banks and regionally Black-owned banks, and recruiting, getting our banks, whether that's our traditional banks or CDFIs, recruiting within the minority community and recruiting through HBCUs. I love it. So that's wonderful insight. Thank you so much. And so my next question is, I think about this all the time. What should organizations and corporations be doing to support minority-owned businesses? Now, of course, there is, in a lot of our cities, in Baltimore, in New Orleans, Atlanta, we have pretty robust ecosystems. But what more should organizations, any part of the ecosystem, what more can we be doing to support minority-owned businesses? And again, with the goal of creating generational wealth, right? Creating these businesses that can, sustain from generation to generation and actually thrive, right? And grow and scale over time. And
Classy, if I could jump in, I think the Urban League's model is a model that works, and that is where you don't ask the doctor if the medicine is working, you ask the patient. I've been to Urban League town halls where you have convened business leaders and simply asked the question that you just said, what can we do more to support your business? That's the conversation that the Urban League has had historically and needs to continue to have across the country, so that you are serving the businesses, the needs of the businesses in your community. And I think when you have those conversations and you listen, and you have on the other side of the table the resources to make a difference, that's how you can assure that the businesses get the support that they need. Because you're going to have at the table business leaders from from New Orleans. You're going to have government leaders, all of who can partner together to do things like what Dr. Brody was saying. Really press banks to invest in our HBCUs. Press banks to have more Black fund managers. Press banks to do more risk lending. All of those things, when you hear them from the community that you serve, and you're at the table and can activate that power, I think that's how you're going to continue the tradition that the Urban League has had a proud tradition of.
I'd like to add to that. I think that Mayor Rawlings Blake is absolutely right. I would also add to that impact investing is a new strategy that people are really thinking hard about in terms of how to actually create an ecosystem and a pipeline of support for small businesses and communities and for minority-owned businesses. And what this does is it takes the basically the deposits, the capital that is in organizations, whether it be their their savings, whether it be foundations and their endowment, a portion of their endowment, pooling it together, and then making a strategic investment in the small business landscape or ecosystem in a community. And with the idea that organizations like foundations already give away grants, which is a 100% loss. But if they're doing impact investing, meaning that they give at cost or very low cost loans to these businesses, then they're practicing the same philanthropic purpose, but they have the possibility of getting a return on that purpose while also building the economic opportunities in their community and building the economy of the community. That's one point. Another point that I'd like to make is that I did a look at a couple of years ago. I looked at the 1099s of all of the African. Quentin, you said you are a member of a fraternity. I'm a Delta. Mayor Rawlings Blake is an AKA. I looked at all the 1099s of all of these institutions, and they're sitting on bucks. They are sitting on bucks, and these are bucks that they're not actually fully utilizing in a year. And so the question becomes, if even they took a portion of the millions of dollars that they take in every year and put it in towards a collective fund, venture capital fund, investment fund to actually support Black-owned businesses, we'd be going a lot farther than we are now. So I do think that there's room and space for our organizations that have some cash flow sitting in banks to actually think more strategically about how we actually self-invest. We've had a long tradition of self-help in our communities, and we need to continue that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting to me thinking about what Mayor Rawlings Blake said about you don't ask the doctor if the medicine is working. And I think that's a concept that I really learned a lot about when I worked for Dr. Rocky Moore. I think it was back in summer of 2017 with the Allies for Reaching Community Health Equity. And so in that regard, we talked about doctors or business owners, banks going into communities and offering these various services that the community may not need. So I think in any community, whether it's New Orleans, Baltimore, Chicago, where I'm from, yes, organizations do have millions of dollars and they have initiatives that they want to carry forward, but is that what the community needs, right? So the first step has to be determining from the community, what do you need, and not offering bottled water where housing is necessary, for instance, right? So what does the community need, and trying to offer that. So I like the fact that Mayor Rawlings Blake brought it up, and it's something that I worked on with Dr. Cummings. So just kind of tying it all together.
Absolutely. I want to be mindful of the time, but I think this is already the start of a good discussion around the things that we need to be thinking about. And of course, there are more questions, right? There's more tenants and spokes to the wheel. But again, this is just the first phase. What I'm hearing is around, Ms. Rawlings-Blake talked about the convening of our leaders and going back to, continuing the process of collaboration when it comes to partnership and when it comes to supporting the initiatives of minority entrepreneurs within our communities. We want to make sure that we focus on that and revisit that. We talked about, impact investing. I love, and what I want to do is, think about how we move some of these forward because, are there spaces for these opportunities and are there enough spaces, right, that people have access to? That's what we want to get to. And so we do have more in this space. I'm looking to continue in the conversation, but I want to be mindful of time and I want to make sure that we have time to talk about workforce because this is a big topic that I know we want to address. And so, and I also want to make sure that we leave time for questions because we do have some from our attendees. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Brody to start our discussion around the future of work in automation. Thank you, Dr. Brody.
Thank you. So I've been working on race and jobs at risk of automation since 2017 when I was working with the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. So I want to just start with automation risk scores. So Fry and Osborne in their article talked about jobs or job skills that can be automated, right? So jobs are broken down in terms of what portion of that job can be automated. So the automation risk score is from 0 to 0.99 or 1, basically. So as I look at this, for instance, I'm looking at the top 10 jobs that are at risk of being automated and the concentration of people with various races in them. So for instance, cashiers, this is from 2018. There were 3.26 million total people employed as cashiers. African Americans accounted for 580,000, and that job has an automation risk score of 0.97. So basically, the whole job, everything, 0.97% can be automated, right, or 97%. Others are receptionists at 0.96, grounds maintenance workers at 0.95, waiters, waitresses, things of that nature. And so it kind of clicked to me that many of these jobs are the same ones that put people at risk for getting COVID. So African Americans are concentrated in these jobs that 5 to 10 years from now will likely be automated. They're now getting COVID. And so I had this thought, what could the Urban League, the UNCF, the HBCUs, training centers, all of these organizations, what can we or should we be doing to prepare students and workers for the future of work with automation, considering that these jobs are going to go away and they're also the ones that are more likely to make more of us sick. So I guess my first question for the panel is, as automation continues to progress, which industries do you think will be the most affected? What jobs and skills do you see going away? And I guess there's a difference from living in the South versus the Northeast. So I'll pose the question that way.
Yeah, so we did a study a couple of years ago, and actually it was the first study of its kind, looking at the impact of automation on autonomous vehicles, on the transportation industry, transportation jobs. And what we found that is if we move to a, if we rapidly move towards level 5 autonomous vehicle technology, meaning that the vehicles that won't need an assist from a human being, that we're looking at the loss of more than 3 million transportation sector jobs across the country. Literally buses being automated, taxis being automated, I mean, all kinds of trucks being automated. And this would disproportionately absolutely harm people of color because, this is the one sector of the labor market where we actually have parity in earnings because many transportation workers are actually members of the unions. And so there's parity of earnings for African Americans in this market. And so what we have here is a perfect storm. The technology is advancing. And we know that it's going to take a lot of jobs, but at the same time, our public education system isn't keeping up in terms of preparing, particularly our youth, for the 21st century economy and the STEM professions that are so critically and vitally important to the tech sector. And so with that, everybody talks about, well, people are going to have to upskill. People who are already in the labor market who lose their jobs are going to have to upskill. They're going to have to go into a different field. I mean, that might be all fine and dandy, but we don't currently have the infrastructure for that. And the last time that we tried it as a nation, it was a failure when we, deindustrialized and sent all of our manufacturing jobs abroad. The program we put in at the federal level did not adequately capture the people who lost their jobs. And so we've got to be intentional about both building the capacity of the public education system, but also building the capacity of post-secondary educational institutions, whether that be community colleges, unions themselves, which I think need to be modernized to actually provide, skills, transitional skills to a broader array of people, and other entities that can actually help with this transition to a new modernized world.
Mayor Rawlings-Blake, I'll turn the question over to you because you were the mayor of a major metropolitan city. So how do you think about that? Like when you were mayor, what kind of programs would you be thinking about? Or how does it work with budgets? How do you transfer money into programs like that? Or convince schools to work with corporations or other centers? Like, how do you get that process started?
Yeah, so it is what you would think is a simple thing, but it is very complex, getting all of the moving parts and the players at the table. I will say how I thought about it was I tried to start the process not by thinking about making sure that we got our piece of the pie, because sometimes I feel like we limit ourselves and we think, well, we need to make sure that whatever percentage that is spent goes to our community. What I tried to do was make a bigger pie. And instead of thinking about making sure that we had space or we had opportunities in these jobs, how can we create the innovation so we are creating unlimited jobs, that our community are the job creators. So that's why I focused on our incubators. Even when we faced major budget deficits, I knew that it was important for us to continue to support our incubators, support the schools that supported STEMs and connect those with the incubators so we could be more job creators. So we weren't always looking for a hand up from an employer, but we were the ones that were creating the jobs. So I think that's really the focus. We want, and particularly this time where there's so much automation, and we can see the horizon very clearly, that the jobs of that many of my generation and my parents' generation depended on will not be there. We have to focus on how we are going to prepare this next generation to be the job creators, so we don't have to worry about what jobs aren't there, because we're the ones creating the jobs.
Absolutely, that makes sense. It can't go away if you're the one that's creating it, right? So I like that. Mr. Messer, you're here in New Orleans. How do you see automation affecting New Orleans? Like, what changes have you seen, and what do you expect to come?
Well, I think the way that you in the lead-in, you talked about the fact that there are a lot of jobs that are very vulnerable. So a lot of frontline workers, folks who are most directly exposed to COVID-19 are at risk of automation. So we have that. I mean, COVID-19 attacked socialization. In New Orleans, there's an economy built upon socialization. And whether it's in our music venues, our restaurants, and things of that nature. So I think one of the things we have to do, I'm proud of the partnership that the Business Alliance and the Urban League of Louisiana have with the Opportunity Center. So it's a place, and there are 4 of them in New Orleans. One of them is housed at the Urban League of Louisiana, in which adult learners have a chance to kind of have serious professional development that allows them to look at and be able to repivot. But I would say just two things in the interest of time. I think one of the things we have to do is something that was earlier mentioned, is the fact that a disproportionate part of the entrepreneurial force, the workforce, are women. And so we have to figure out wraparound services such that it's hard to think about reskilling if you also have to think about childcare. If you have to think about your own education, you have to think about your kids' education, or you're doing whatever mothers, superwomen have to do. You shouldn't be expected to be a superwoman all the time. So I think that's one thing, and that's something that is of disproportionate impact in a city like New Orleans. I think the second thing is that we really, COVID-19, we shouldn't forget that COVID-19 only presages as a harbinger of future pandemics and also the ravages of climate change. So it's going to operate the same way. And I think what we're going to have to do is look at, well, what has COVID-19 said about certain industries? We need to begin getting people focused on telemedicine. We need to get people focused on cardiovascular therapeutics. We need to get people focused on industrial sterilization. But we also realize there's going to be a set of people for whom it will be significant dislocation. So what do you do about not only the adults, but the children that are impacted by that? We have to create a city of lifelong learners. That's really ultimately what we're going to have to do.
Dr. Brody, I wanted to add one more thing when Quentin made me think of it, is the rethinking our economy in the wake of COVID, and really valuing the industries that are essentially ours. And I say that because what I have seen crop up, and I'm sure you've seen crop up, and it is particular interest to New Orleans and to Baltimore, is the rise of this virtual tourism, where people who have particular skills and talents are able to showcase them to an entirely new audience around the globe. And I think in places like New Orleans, where the culture is a real commodity, an economic commodity, I think that there are ways to organize around that, so people are able to make a living from the things that are essentially the culture of New Orleans, that they're able to capitalize on that. And I know that during the pandemic, I took a cooking class in Mexico City and learned how to make tacos. I'm not going to Mexico City to learn how to make tacos, but I was able to do that. And I will tell you right here and now, if the places I like to go to eat in New Orleans start doing cooking classes, I will attend every single class. Sign me up.
Ms. Duckworth, jump in there. What do you think? You're here in New Orleans as well.
Yeah, so the skills gap promises to leave industry at a loss for qualified employees in significant portions of New Orleans, in particular Metro New Orleans. And so, we have got to find a long-term answer, which we think could start with the region's K through 12 education system. We know that it suffers greatly, but the immediate need dictates that coordination between local government, employers, training providers alike, to come together and develop and encourage non-traditional rapid technical training to ready individuals for jobs in automation. I mean, right now, people are not ready. We offer virtual job fairs every month, and it's unbelievable the number of individuals that get on the calls who just aren't ready to even be on the call. And so we have got to begin to educate people, in particular in our marginalized communities. We have offenders coming out who have no idea in some instances what automation even is, based on, when they went into the correctional institutions. And so we really have to begin to put programs together to train individuals about automation?
I appreciate that, because that leads into the last question that I want to ask. I feel like I could talk to all of you all for the rest of the day and pick your brains and gain information, but I know that we don't have time for that. So as I think about all of you all and how I know you, how I've worked with you, you've all hired people, you've all created jobs. So as an academic and as a College of Business dean, what do you think is the 1 or 2 or 3 most important skills for college graduates to have in order to work in the future of work with automation? What would you tell me as a college dean or my provost or my president? What do we need to be doing to prepare students for the jobs that you know are available and will continue to be available, considering the skills gap that Ms. Duckworth just talked about?
I would give you 3 things. One is critical thinking. You know, our kids are filling in so many bubbles that, you know, I think that, you know, they don't know how to actually question and think about things, you know, from a critical lens. And I do think that critical thinking, which can also be termed creativity, or, you know, but basically using maximizing your brain output towards problem solving, I think is something that, you know, it's becoming a lost art. And I think that it's something that, you know, given, you know, the trajectory that we're seeing in the labor market, that is absolutely necessary. Number 2, writing.
These down.
Yes.
Writing is incredibly important, and not everybody knows how to do it. And by the way, I have taught at Black schools and I have taught at white schools, and writing is a problem across the board, no matter your race. And so I think that writing is incredibly important. It's a skill that's becoming a completely lost art, but it's still, I think, incredibly important. It will continue to be important.
Yeah.
And then the third one is similar, but it is verbal communication, and I would say the ability to navigate, you know, successfully amongst people of various backgrounds and differences. So successful verbal communication and the ability to successfully navigate difference in group settings, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm jotting these down, because all of the things that you're saying are going to show up in our business communications and managerial communications classes in the fall. So, all right, I'm going in the order that I see you. So, Mr. Messer, what would you add to the list?
Yeah, so, you know, Dr. Cummings took my top 3, so you got the top 3 draft choices there. Let me add maybe 3 others. I think one is really an attitude of gratefulness. I think that you can get a lot further, even if you're not the most talented, if you're just grateful and thankful. And so I think that's one. I do think, in addition to, similar to Dr. Cummings' point about critical thinking, I think young people have to figure out how to ask those second and third order questions. You know, that, and I don't know really what you call that. It's that a natural inquisitiveness, a desire to try to push the solution as far as it's going to go, and then sort of say, okay, I've thought about the 5 or 6 different doors, and now I need. Sometimes people will just kind of stop and say, well, you told me to do X, I did, it didn't work. What now? What? And you're like, what? And you just end up spending so much time, you end up doing it yourself, and then that doesn't really help you out. And I do think the final thing I would say is really 2 things, a tie. One, exposure to foreign languages and foreign cultures. I do think that we tend to undervalue that. So I would encourage as many young people, I didn't do it in undergrad, regrettably, but study abroad program, become fluent in at least one other language, and live abroad. And then the second thing is I'm not saying you have to be a programmer and do Python or Ruby on the Rails or whatever the hottest thing, but at least have some ability to understand user interface. Because if we talked about automation, everything is going to have a user interface, and that's where humanity graduates can really excel and shine.
Ms. Duncan.
I'm gonna let our panelists take that away.
Okay, I didn't want to skip you. All right, Mayor Rollins away. It's on you.
I would say, we spend a lot of time focusing on, as Dr. Rockmore Cummings talked about, filling in the bubbles and kids' IQs. We also need to focus on their EQs, or emotional quotient. Too many times we try to shield young people from failure, and it is in failure that you can learn some of your best lessons. And I think we need to have our children practice what failure feels like, so they can learn from it and they can grow from it. We need they need to rehearse resilience, because I don't necessarily think it's natural. I think it is something that is practiced, and our parents' generation, the generations before them, had to practice resilience because that was the only way. But we I think, again, do a disservice to our young people when we helicopter in and try to solve their problems, because we are going to need them to be able to fall, pick themselves back up, and keep going, and keep trying, if we're going to stay competitive, and we're going to have a strong, not just a strong for the moment, but a strong for a lifetime workforce.
Thank you. I love rehearsed resilience. That's going on my board when this is over. So thank you for that. Ms. Duckworth?
So, to add to this, I would say that we really need to build the soft skills up in our youth, even in our adults in many cases. They really need to know how to communicate across all levels. And I think that was Quentin said earlier about attitudes. We have to change the attitudes. We really have to make people understand that they're not entitled to everything, that they need to work towards these things, and they need to understand what it is that they're even working towards. I would say that another trait that they should have, and that we need to look at, is helping them to understand when it's okay to help for support. A lot of times, what we've been seeing is that people are not asking for help, and they're falling by the wayside, and they're not being added to the conversations. In fact, they're being left out some of the conversations. And so I really would just want to hone in on uplifting the soft skills for professional development for both youth and adult across the board, in order for everybody to succeed in this digital divide that we have, and understanding that automation is here and it is not going anywhere. It's really growing.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank all of you for participating in this portion of the panel. I am going to turn it back over to Ms. Duncan for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brody, and thank you to our panelists. We do have a couple of questions in the queue, but I did want to make sure I will be also utilizing the term rehearse resilience. I love it.
Yes.
Mayor Rawlings Blake, and it's because it puts into context one thing that is important to me as we go through this process of looking at how we recover and work through the pandemic. One of the things that has been alarming to me is, and I'm going back to the entrepreneurship perspective, is how many of our businesses across the board did not have in place certain resources that were learned from prior crises. So we are no stranger to crisis. This is not the first, it won't be the last. But what did we learn from Hurricane Katrina? What did we learn from the BP oil spill? What did we learn? And what I'm finding is that we still were not prepared and not ready. And so that's why I love that concept. I've been thinking about how do we put this into some context. It's really about, going back to the lessons that we should have learned and getting ready for the next one. This is not the last. This is not, and this is, of course, we're nowhere near over, right? And so, I want to, again, thank you all for your insight. Again, I know, we want to be mindful of time. We do have some questions, but again, this is just the start of the discussion, just bringing this to the forefront, bringing this to the people. And so we appreciate that. Erica, what questions do we have?
Okay, the first question is from Oswald. He says, if current trends persist, it will take 228 years for Black families to accumulate the same amount of wealth as whites, according to a report released this week from the Corporation for Economic Development and the Institute for Policy Studies. How will closing the wealth gap change the plight of the next 2 generations of the working poor?
It's about opportunity. I mean, if you're closing the wealth gap, you are building a diverse middle class, and you're providing escalators to greater success, greater probability of success, not just in education, but in career, and every disparity and outcome that we ever talk about, whether that is the health disparities or whether we're talking about, wealth disparities, income disparities, also, technology disparities. So with that, when you're closing the wealth gap, you're building, what was the term? Resilience?
Yes.
What was
resilience.
By closing the wealth gap, you are actually building a mechanism to inbuild rehearsed resilience into the infrastructure of our nation's economy in a way that allows for failure, by the way. In a way that allows for people to bounce back and not just be completely. Quentin, you said you only have one opportunity to actually get an investment for a business idea.
If that,
right. And so what we're talking about is by closing that racial wealth gap, you're building a resilience that allows us to build and grow, just like white communities have for more than a century. But you're giving us the opportunity to do that.
Hey, Classy, if I may jump in, because unfortunately I need to jump off, but I want to say, first of all, thank you. I've been honored. I've learned a lot. I'm a Christian. I'm not apologizing for that. So I think that God works beyond time, and I think if there's any community that understands what God can do, it's Black folks and brown folks. And so I know what the facts might say, but I serve a Savior that is going to defy facts. And I know that Black folks are going to figure out how to do it. I know my children, I'm confident, are going to be entrepreneurs. I don't know how they're going to do it and maybe what form, but they and their children are going to do that. And so I just want us to not, yes, it is dark. I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but I don't want us to be consumed by what is directly in front of us and lose the long view that has been so good for us as a people.
Absolutely.
But I've got to go, but I thank you so much, and I've been honored. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I'll go back to, one of the points from, again, our entrepreneurship segment. It's really all of those, pieces are interconnected, as Dr. Cummings was saying. So, the economic resilience or the creating wealth impacts the social justice. The social justice, it's directly related to, what we're experiencing now, right? The health disparities, all of it is interconnected. And so I think that's a powerful, therein lies a powerful opportunity for collaborative efforts to be made across our community, right? So it's not just, me working in isolation on an entrepreneurship, be working alongside our Cherie, with our workforce development. It's working alongside Judy in terms of social justice and policy. It's all interconnected, right? And then doing the work with understanding the determinants of these disparities. So it all works together. And it's interconnected, so it's going to take a collaborative effort to address. What else do you have for us, Erica?
I have a question, actually, from a student. I know that Mayor Rollins Wake has to go, and I'm going to start with Dr. Rocky Moore because this is one of my favorite students. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites. I love them all, okay? But I'm going to just say it. This is one of my favorites. So this is from Alicia Hui. She is she's coming into her senior year in accounting, and unfortunately, she's a dope, right? I get to say that. It's a joke between she and I. No offense to you, Dr. Rocky Moore, but Alicia will understand that because she's listening. So her question was, I'm really loving the tips. They're very helpful. But as a graduating senior in times like these, how could we better use these tips in our current internships and going forward into our future careers? And so I want to connect you with Alicia after this, but that is her question.
So first of all, congratulations, Alicia, on your pending graduation. And I'm glad that you mentioned internships, because internships are a critical part of the ladder to success. And you have to recognize that even when you're in your internship, don't treat it as a blow-off opportunity, something not to be cherished or valued. This is the start of your career, and it's the opportunity for you to actually meet people who are likely going to be a part of your professional network for the rest of your life. And so with that, I think that it's incredibly important that you remain professional at all times. You do not, you don't burn bridges where you don't have to. You certainly seek out people whom you admire or you think can give you some advice, and ask them for informational interviews to talk about your aspirations and to get their insight. And so, it's about relationship building, it's about communicating, it's about connecting and networking. And so everything that was mentioned by all of the panelists earlier, I mean, these are critical skills that you have to carry with you in your career. But the relationship building is critical too, with your peers and also with those who are in positions that are higher than you. And frankly, in places like DC, I used to always tell the interns at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, your intern one day can be your boss the next.
That's right. That's
and
right.
so don't even think that you can dismiss people who are considered lower on the totem pole than you.
That's right.
They're all a part of your professional network. And so, with that, you want to be about the business of relationship building.
And I just want to chime in just for 1 second. Thank you so much, Cherie Duckworth needs to jump off. And I want to thank her for representing our Workforce and Development organization. Thank you so much, Cherie.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you again, Classy, for inviting me. This has been a very rich conversation, and we are only at the beginning of it. And Dr. Cummings, I do agree with what you said. Your intern could be your boss one day. So, as they say, people you see on your way up are sometimes the same people you see on the way down. So, and that should be some encouragement to individuals or to students, Dr. Brody, who are in internship positions, that can turn into your permanent job, and you may be competing for a management position within the company where you were an intern. So, but again, thank you, ladies, and it has been indeed a pleasure for me to serve on this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Erica, do we have another question?
We do. The next question is from Kim. She says, how can we advocate for ourselves for new policies and ensure that the next generation has a better opportunity to create and maintain generational wealth?
So I'm just going to say that we have an agenda to close the racial wealth gap on the website, globalpolicysolutions.org. Go to reports, and there is a policy agenda to close the racial wealth gap. Take that to your city council member, take that to your mayor, take that to your state legislators, take that to your federal policymakers, both Senate and representatives from the House. You have to communicate with them and tell them and ask them for what you want and ask them to lead on this issue. And so, you don't have to start from scratch. There's plenty of information out there. We know the nature of the problem. You can take studies and reports with you if you want. But also make sure that we have the nature of some of the solutions. And so ask them to legislate around it. Ask them to be leaders around this. And ask them to, be the change that we need with regards to this issue in this country.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, don't go alone. It is so clear in this world that's so heavily influenced by social media that you are not alone. The issues that you care about, there's so many others that care about them too. Activate that social, that virtual network into reality. because that is how we are going to see change. We need the protesters to, once the protest is done and the hashtag has waned, we need them to pick up, the bus schedule or whatever, it is, and to go to City Hall and to go to the state capitol and to come to DC, so we can hear their voices in a way that will impact literal changes in policy, changes in law in a consistent way. My hope is that this, there's this question that keeps going on. Is this a moment or a movement? It is up to us for this not to be a moment. It will be a movement when we carry, just like Dr. Rockmore Cummings says, when you carry that information into the halls of power and demand change, and you don't come by yourself. You come with all of those individuals whose voices have been marginalized for too long, who now know in new ways, how to make their voices heard. So I'm very, very optimistic about what I see when I look at the next generation of change makers, because they're not going to take no for an answer, and I know that that they are going to act with integrity, and they're going to act diligently to make sure the changes that the generations that have gone before them were unable to enact, that they make those changes happen.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and we have run out of time, but again, this is just the start of the conversation. So please hold your questions. We will return to this dialogue, but also if you have any pressing questions that you want to connect with our panelists on, you can email us at the Urban League of Louisiana Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at WBRC@urbanleaguela, WBRC@urbanleaguela.org to send us your question. You can also see on the screen all of the websites for our panelists to connect with the information that they've shared today on policy, on entrepreneurship, on wealth creation, on workforce development. And again, this is how you can see about more of the work that they're doing. So I wanted to make sure that you guys saw and we shared their information. This has been a great time and a great opportunity for us to share with attendees to really get into the mindset of how we move forward. I again want to thank all of our panelists. You guys are amazing. You guys are the thought leaders. You guys are the folks that are moving these initiatives forward and are doing the work. And what I encourage our attendees to do is, we just talked about, what do we do in terms of policy and legislation? We are not the only ones in this space that should be doing this work. It is up to our community to also mobilize, to be making phone calls to legislators, just like, we talked about, be making phone calls, writing letters, and really speaking up and for the things that you want to see in your community. We heard it, you're not in this alone. If we all pool our resources together, you have leadership, but you also have people in our communities. You all as residents, you all as small businesses, you all as the workforce should be standing up for these things as well. And so let's start there with learning more, getting more information, and understanding how we can connect the dots on seeing some of these things move forward. We have recorded this session. It will be available on the Urban League of Louisiana's website. And so if you want to, again, connect with us, please reach out to us by email and through our website. Again, thank you, Dr. Brody, for your partnership in this. I'm so excited. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Take care.
Great job.